Guys, today we are going to learn how to recreate an amazing website, and before we even jump in, here is a look at what we are going to be recreating through these tutorial series right now. Take a look. Alright, with that said, first off, let's dive into the site. Let's actually scroll through it. Let's show you how it responds, moves, etc. And we will break down this series into a couple of things. We're going to build the desktop version first, the tablet version, then the mobile version. So with that being said, let's get started and begin. First off, let me go ahead and share my screen and so we can take a look at this beauty. All right, so what we are looking at first is we have the Super Mario Bros. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is from one of our monthly challenges in our Discord. If you would like to join, not only partaking in recreating this, we have a monthly challenge every month in our Discord. If you guys want to check out the links down in the description, you guys can do that and join each month as we build something from scratch and watch me live the first week of every month building my submission based on what our theme challenge or what the theme of the challenge is. With that being said, let's dive into the Super Mario Bros. Movie theme of November's challenge. All right, so what we have here is we have a simple hamburger menu, very easy. We have the Super Mario Bros. Logo, and actually let me just go ahead and refresh this so we get a little bit of the animation here as well. So we have very easy animations. We have two buttons that have on hover effects. We can press the play trailer button where we get the trailer of Mario in the beginning in a nice little light box. We also have a buy a ticket, which isn't linked, but we can make it linked. We'll show you guys how to do that. We have our Nintendo and Illumination logos here, our menu, and then on scroll, Mario stays sticky as content comes in and animates on each side of the logo and Mario as we scroll down. We have the release date, and also at the bottom we have Mario go into the pipe, which is absolutely awesome. And as we actually scale this down, so let's go ahead and, as if you guys saw that, basically when I resize, the next breakpoint is this where we've moved everything to the left hand side. We've stacked our buttons here. Mario stays sticky. Our content then moves to the left here, and over on the left, our pipe is basically where everything has moved. So this is what the tablet breakpoint is. Basically from here to here, this is our tablet. And as we crouch here, we're getting into a little bit of a smaller breakpoint. We have about 4 breakpoints on this to control this a little bit better. And as we move into mobile, we get a pretty much a single experience here where we have everything stacked. The Super Mario Bros. Logo, the buttons are still stacked. We still have the play trailer where this pops up nice and beautifully. Mario is still sticky. Our content is basically staying sticky and in the center of everything as we scroll. So we get to focus on one piece of content at a time. And then as we scroll down, we have the release date, our 2 buttons, again, recalling our audience, giving them calls to action, whether to play the trailer again, buy a ticket, or just enjoy Mario going in and out of his pipe. With that being said, let's dive into the desktop version of this first, and let's begin. So I am going to jump into my Editor X file. I'm going to start from scratch here with you guys so you can see exactly how I made this. We are currently in basically the editable version of the site that you just saw. So what I'm going to do is help you guys do this because there are some things in the editor that might seem a little funky. Like for example, this does not at all look at all related to what the real site looks like, and that is because all of this space here, we basically are doing some good math to make sure that everything stays in its place regardless of what browser, desktop, mobile, whatever device you're looking at this website. We are making sure that the math is sound so that Mario stays where he's supposed to be, everything is supposed to stay where it is, and regardless of whatever this looks like, as long as we are good with the math, the percentages make sense, then we're good. I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a new page. We're gonna call this, instead of V2, we're going to call this Mario Web Tutorial. All right, now let's begin. So this is actually really simple. So what I have done so far, just to make it easier for you as well, while you guys are watching this, if you haven't already, make sure that you sign up for wherever we are putting. We've yet to build it, but there will be a place where you guys are able to get this either down in the description or in wherever web page this is living. We are going to give you access to this style sheet that we have created. So site styles, I'm going to go to my assets. So you guys will have saved assets. I have put everything into a Mario movie sort of package. Okay, buttons, images, logos, text all this stuff I've put together to where you guys can basically just very easily follow along with me and not have to recreate these things. Basically just drag and drop, figure out how these things are built hierarchy wise, and go along your merrily way. All right, so the first thing we are going to do, and I also want to have this here just for reference. So what I am going to go ahead and essentially do first is I want to start getting my background image in here. I want to start getting my sections, and we will focus on this section first. So let's begin. First off, I'm going to delete the main section here, or rather our header. So this header, this master, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it. And I want to click on our main section here, and I want to set this to, for right now, I want to, let's see what we have it here as. So I'm gonna go back to my first page here, my V2, and I just want to make sure that I have the numbers correct. So I'm gonna go to my section, I'm going to go here. We're pretty much gonna do the same thing. So we have a 1x5, basically we have 5 sections, but I wanna see how large each one of these sections is. So I'm going to go to my rows panel inside of my inspector layout panel. So essentially each one of these is basically set to auto, 100 VH, close to 100 VH, or 100 VH minus 50 pixels. Because when this is actually published, we get a 50 pixel banner. So that's why we're doing negative 50 pixels, so that this section actually is 100% VH, but just subtract 50 pixels, that banner from it. So we're gonna go ahead and set up that first. So just for now, I'm gonna go to pages. I'm pretty much going to set everything to 100 VH. So I'm gonna set this up. I'm gonna go to, instead of a 1x1, I'm gonna go to other. And I'm going to type in 5 rows here. Hit apply. Great. And I'm going to go to my inspector panel, my layouts, and I'm going to go to each one of these layouts here, my rows. And I am going to set each one of these not to 100 pixels, but I'm going to set them to 100 VH, except for the first one. Okay. So just going to go to each one of these, 100 VH, copy, and I'm just going to paste, hit enter, paste, enter, paste, enter, paste, enter, and it looks like, I'm gonna set these to VH too. It looks like for whatever reason, it was keeping on min-max. So that VH is very difficult to find for whatever reason. VH, we're gonna set this to 100. And now up here, I'm just gonna set this to calculation, just like we talked about. And we're gonna do 100 VH. We're gonna edit this, minus, not plus, 100 pixels. There you go. All right, so we have our 5 rows, perfect. And now we can start adding some things in. Now, before I begin, I actually want to add a gap in between each one of these sections, so there's a little bit of spacing between each section. I'm gonna set this to about 100, which is perfect. And we'll get a feel for this once we get in there. Maybe I'll do 50 for now. And I can always cross-check with the actual homepage. All right, so what I'm gonna do with the background is I am just going to take this image, I'm gonna Control-C. Again, I will give you guys the folders for the assets for this so you can just upload it to your project as well. We are going to go to my pages, new page, and I am just going to plop this right into our section here, Control-V, and I'm going to dock this to the top. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna reset the image here, okay? I'm gonna set the width to 100%. Height, I believe we're gonna set this to auto, which is perfectly fine. And I want this to scale all the way down. I'm gonna set this to 100 as well, 100%. Perfect. I want this to be 100% width, 100% height. All right, so next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna quick add a menu. So I'm gonna go to my add elements quick piece right here, add elements. I'm looking for menu in search, and I'm going to just grab a very simple menu like this. Now I did upload a menu of my own, so what I'm going to do is change basic shape, site files, and I am going to pick my menu SVG. Okay, add to page, there we go, and I'm going to size this to what I want. And again, all the assets for you guys will be in a folder or an asset style that you can bring into EditorX, so you don't have to upload and figure out where everything is. We got your back. All right, so I'm gonna just pull everything in. So I am going to select my section, these 3 dots, quick add, and we are going to grab some of our images. All right, and I'm gonna make sure that my image is actually, it's basically populated in that 3rd grid cell. I wanna bring it to the top. I'm gonna change image, and we are going to get the Mario Bros logo. Now again, another way I can bring this in is simply by going to my assets here and having, essentially pulling these in. So for example, I could just have pulled this in, right? And it's the exact same size that I want it. It's from the exact same size of the website that we've just finished. I'm gonna do the same thing with some of our buttons here. I'm gonna do this for our logos. I'm gonna do this for our buttons as well. I'm gonna pull this out. And I am also going to pull out our buy ticket button. Pretty easy stuff. Now, if you guys are wondering how to build these things, because they are custom, right? It's very easy. And I'll kind of go over one with you because this one is just a basic button. So I'm going to move over this entire container because this is actually pretty complex if we go to our layers panel. This is a container that has a button that has a text element in it and a play button. This is what is known as a custom button, whereas this alone is just a button. So let's talk about how to make custom buttons. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a container. So I'm going to right click, make sure I'm in my section, not on my image. I'm going to quick add a container here. I'm going to make sure that it is in my, here we go, my topmost grid cell. I'm going to scale it to the size that I want, both height and width. I'm gonna scroll down to where I get my design stuff, borders. I'm gonna go to corners. I'm gonna set this to 999 so I get a nice rounded sort of pill button. And instead of having an actual color, I'm gonna set this to 0. I'm gonna set the, or actually no, the border is gonna stay up, the background is gonna go to 0. The width of the border I'm gonna actually set to about 2 to 3 to 4 pixels. So it's thick enough. I'm gonna set this to white. And now what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna take this container and I am going to split it into 2. So instead of a 1x1, I'm going to do a 2x1 to split it in half. And I'm going to take this split and I'm going to I'm gonna pull this over to the left over here. Reason being is we are going to put this image, this play button that we see over here, I'm gonna put it inside of this left-hand side, and then we are going to add text play trailer to the right side. So I'm in my container, 3 dots, quick add. We're gonna do a title. For now, we're just gonna call this play trailer. I'm gonna set the width of this to 100%. Basically, so it takes the entire width of from one end to the other end of the container. And I am now going to just focus on the size of the text. We're gonna drop this down to 16 pixels, maybe pull it up to 18. I'm gonna center this using my alignment tools here, just like this. And it looks like there is a little space to the left of it. There's some margin here, I'm gonna zero that out. Make sure the fill color of the text is white, perfect. And I'm just going to copy this image here, this right there. And I'm just gonna pull it into this container. Control paste, or Control V. I'm going to pull it into the left grid cell here, center it, and there we go. We have our custom button, which is pretty good. But here's the thing. Let's take a look at this. I'm gonna preview. One is clickable, this one is not. It's simply just an image, a container, and text. Let's talk about how we make this clickable. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go here, or actually, let's go back to our container here. I'm gonna do a 3 dots here, I'm going to quick add, and we are going to add a button. And I'm going to set this button to 100% width, and the minimum height also is to 100% height. I'm going to turn off the background color, and I'm going to turn off, I'm going to change the text, and I'm literally going to space it out, nothing. So what this will do now is essentially, we have a button, right? And I also need to change the hover effects here. So I'm in my design tab here of my button. We edited the regular, the hover, we're gonna set this to 0%. And now what I can do is I can actually set a link to this button that is inside of our container. So I can set this to, let's just set this to google.com. We're gonna set it open to a new window, hit done. Let's go to preview. And here we go. So now our actual container is clickable because we have a button in there. Let's go ahead and click. It'll open up a new window and we are at google.com. Easy stuff. So that is essentially how you make a custom button. Now, if you want to add a little bit more spacing, just like we did, just take a little bit more time and add some margin. So I would go to my container, go back to my layouter, go down to my padding in here, and simply just do maybe 10 pixels. So we get a little bit of padding over here, and I could do the same thing to the other side if I desired. But for right now, I'm going to, now that you kind of know how to make this, I'm going to delete it because I have the perfect one that I spent time to do. Now, if you guys wanted, if you guys take a notice on this, there's actually some very good padding in here as well. If we wanted to perfect this button, I could set this container, instead of to 0.6 FR, I literally could set it to max content, basically saying, hey, left side of the container, please just fit snug to the size, to the width of my image that is in that grid cell, which means you don't have to do the math. All you need to do, and what I mean by not having to do the math, is basically this whole section. I might as well do it to this section since we're at it. So I'll do max content for both. So what this does is it basically makes these two sections collapse to the content that's inside of the grid cell. So you can see this collapse a little bit here, but for some reason there's some extra space in here, and it's because we have a little bit of a, let's figure out why. I'm gonna set this to max content. There we go. So we're basically overriding, there was width here overriding the max content. So now what I can do here is, instead of messing with the width, I can simply go to my padding and add additional space in here. And if I wanted space between these two content pieces here, what I need to do is go to gap, and I want to add a 10 pixel gap in between this content. Now we have a little bit of space in here if you guys see that. So essentially what we've done is we've taken this container, we've set the left grid cell to max content, please squeeze to the left content, which is the play button. The right side, max content, please, hey container, please squeeze to the width of the play trailer text. It's done that. Now to control the spacing on the left, the right, and the center in between those elements, we've added padding to the left of the container, 10 pixels to the right of the container, and we have added a 10 pixel gap in between these assets here. So hopefully that is self-explanatory. And if we wanted to, just like I did here, I can add even more padding, maybe something around like 20 pixels there. All right, that's the perfect button. Let's continue. So I am actually going to, maybe, I might hide this. I'm just gonna put this away, don't display. And I'm gonna take my original button here, selected by the container, and I'm going to move it right next to my button, just like this. Now, if you guys are wondering how to make this button, it's pretty simple. All I did was click add elements, go to our buttons, I literally just pulled one of these puppies out, scaled it to my desired size. I changed the color to our red, and I changed the text font and the font scaling as well. So pretty simple stuff. And again, if you don't want to do all that, you can simply just drag this button from the assets panel folder that I have given you all, okay, right here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want to connect these two buttons together. All right, so I'm going to select both. At first, I'm going to select, make sure not just the button, but the container. I want to make sure I'm selecting all of it, the whole group. I'm going to select my buy button here, holding shift, and we get this option here, placing container. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And why I'm doing this is essentially it's allowing me to group the content. We're going to do the same thing. We're trying to group content just like we would in our design platform of choice, whether it be Adobe XD, Figma, what have you. And just like what we did with this button, there is some extra space in this container we do not need. So I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to set the width to max content, or even before I do that, I'm going to set the minimum height to none. Height, we are going to do, it should be auto. Now I want to see kind of what's happening here. So we have a bottom of negative or of 98. I'm going to zero that out. We have some margin. I'm just going to zero out all the margin here. And I'm just going to try to find Here it is. There's some margin down below. It's 98. So I'm going to zero that out. There might be some here as well in the container. Yep, here we go. I'm going to zero that out. Perfect. So now we should just have a container. This container. I'm going to call this button container. And that holds both of our buttons just like this. Now what I want to do to even have this even more flexible and also easy for us to use across different breakpoints is I want to separate these using grids. So instead of a 1x1, I'm going to do a 2x1 to help separate the buttons. Now here's just like what we did with the white button, the white outline button. We're going to set not to 1 FR. We're going to set these to max content, both left and right. There we go. So they're really close next to each other, and we're going to separate them using the gap. Now, if you guys see this, there's a little bit of extra room here in this container. So we're going to go up and try to find where this discrepancy is. And it's with this width, basically saying, hey, this container, can you try to be 26% of the section size? We don't care about that. We're going to set this to auto, or rather max content. There we go. So now everything is max content. Great. We don't, EditorX is doing the math for us. Perfect. All we care about is separating these buttons through a gap. And we're going to do about a 15 pixel gap. Now, what some of you guys are probably thinking, especially, let's say if we wanted to stack this instead, right? Some of you guys might be like, well, Brandon, why can't I just stack? Trust me, where stacks are, it's very difficult to manipulate them across breakpoints. Containers are much easier to deal with. EditorX does the math, especially when you're doing things like min and max content. Other than that, containers win overall when it comes to responsivity, less work, and less weird things happening when you start going from desktop, tablet to mobile. So highly recommend using containers over stacks in like all cases. All right, so let's move on. Let's go ahead and get Mario in here. So far we have our logo, we have our buttons in a container. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and grab Mario. Again, I'm going to go to my section, my 1 and 5 section. I'm going to quick add, or rather, we're going to go and grab from my assets panel, my Mario website folder. I'm going to grab Mario, and he should be in here. If he is not, we are just going to use our media. But when you guys do this, you should be able to pull him out of the assets because I will have updated the folders, so no worries. And I'm going to scale him to pretty good size, probably about here. Just eyeball it. And I'm going to keep him pinned to the bottom. So position type, we're going to do sticky, offset 65%. And we might not even need that. Let's actually keep it at 0 for now. And you guys can see really what happens and what the offset means. The offset just means, hey, can you keep Mario like this, this much, whether it be pixels or percentage, away from the top of the website. So because I developed like a new way of doing it, which is much easier, I don't even think we need the offset. So we have Mario here. We are going to do something immediately. We're going to put him in his own container. In this container, the width, we're going to set this to max content. We want it to be the same size Mario is, but we're going to actually Control Z that real quick. We're going to set Mario to a very specific pixel width here, 176, and we'll change that in a little bit. We're going to scale this proportionally, 176 for now. We will turn him into a percentage, but for now, we're going to place in container, set the container to width, or excuse me, a height of 100%. Min height, set this to none. All right, so we have our container. We're going to also set this to sticky, and we are going to, let's take a peek at what we have so far. So far we have our background image, we have our menu, which is pretty easy. It already does like a default menu. We don't really need to touch that. We have our logo out here. We have a sticky Mario, and we have our Nintendo and Illumination logo over here. Now, for those of you who are wondering, hey, how did you do this? This is the exact same way we did with our play trailer button and how we connected our buy button and our play trailer in using a container. We simply just imported our Nintendo button, or excuse me, our Nintendo logo, our Illumination button, and we added a, I'll just show you again. So I took these, paste, go to my layers. I'm gonna close some of these things. We have the Nintendo logo. All right, so I will essentially push this to grid cell at the top. All right, so we have our Nintendo logo over here. We have our Illumination, copy, paste. All I did was I took these two, holding shift, placing container. Our container is now going to do a 3x1. Each one of these, I'm going to use this to move this. I'm going to take our Nintendo logo. I'm going to make sure that it is only in the left grid cell. I'm going to set it to 100%, scale proportionally. And now I am going to just make sure that each one of these, instead of one FR, just like we have done in the past, we're going to do max content. Actually, Control Z. All right. I want Nintendo to have a minimum width. Perfect. Or an actual width. So they're both 110. So now that I can go back to the container, I'll set this to max content. Boom. I will also set this to max content. There we go. And we should have one more. I'm going to keep it 1 FR for now because, this is why. So illumination, it is showing that it is in both grid cells. I'm going to put it in the right hand side. I now can go into here, right click, or just click on it, max content. There we go. And for this middle section, I'm just going to right click, quick add title. I'm literally just going to type a plus. I'm going to go in here, size, width will be max content. And this plus, I'm just going to place in this middle section here, make sure it's top aligned, and I will set the color to white. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these logos and I'm going to center align them using my alignment tools just like this. And there we have it. This is exactly what we did to get this up top here. And if we wanted to have a little bit more space, like for example, like if I go in here instead of 1 FR, we go ahead and do max content. Just like we've done before, we find our gap right here and we set 10 pixels. And now there's 10 pixels between Nintendo and the plus and 10 pixels between the plus and illumination. So that's how it's done. So we'll go ahead and close this. We'll delete that. Now let's move on. I do want to kind of have a little bit of, we have about 4% from the left. We have about 56 pixels from the top. I'll set that also to a percentage. We'll do 4% and 4%. And I'm going to do the same with our logos over here. So I'm going to do it dock to the top and to the right. We're going to do 4% from the right and 4% from the top. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we want to start building out some of these side sections, which is really easy. And we also want to get our pipe in there. And then we'll talk about animations, which is the easiest part. And especially if you are pulling from the assets library, you kind of already have some of the animations. So if I preview this, you can already see if you have pulled some of this content from our asset libraries, they actually already come with the animations with them. So if you want to build these animations or use these animations for your own content, highly recommend you just use the assets that we have provided for you, upload them to your site and create your own animations. So what I'm going to do from here on out is, okay, I want to make sure that this is sticky as well. Please don't pay attention to Mario being over top of the buttons. That doesn't matter. If you guys remember, the preview version of the site looked nothing like the published site. So just keep that in mind. As long as your math makes sense, like the calculation, you'll be fine. I am going to take both the logo and our button container here. Let's find that. Button container, and we have our logo here. I am going to hold shift, click, and I am going to make sure we center align these. And I'm going to place, instead of stack, okay, remember you could use stack, but I like to use container because it's a little bit easier to manipulate. So I'm going to take these, I'm actually going to place this in the container. So I'm going to Control X, select this container, paste it in, pull it to the bottom. And I want to take this container, I'm going to just call this logo and button container. Instead of a 1x1, we're going to do a 1x2. Okay, the top portion is going to be specifically for the logo. The bottom portion of the container is specifically going to be for the buttons. And I'm going to align the buttons to the bottom, the center, and we are going to set these to, instead of min-max, we are going to do max content, just like we've been doing. So as I'm doing this, essentially how EditorX works is you're kind of thinking about these things almost like puzzle pieces. How can we best contain these assets so that as we are, as this content is moving, as we're going through different breakpoints, how are we able to easily keep this content together so that when we go into another breakpoint, the things aren't floating elsewhere. The better contained, the better rules that you have for your assets, your containers, your assets, the easier it is to go from one breakpoint to another and control what exactly your site is doing. Okay, so from a width perspective, instead of 1FR, we're going to set this to max content as well. So it includes the buttons, max content. Okay, and let's go up to width. Here we go, because max content, it got larger, right, to incorporate our buttons. But as you can see, the actual container itself, it's stopping right here. So that means that there's a discrepancy. We're going to go to our width, boom, set this to max content. There we go. Now we want space between our logo and our buttons. So we're going to find our gap. There we go. And we're going to set this to about, let's set this to 30. Perfect. All right. Now we are going to put our Mario container on top because we want him on top of all the assets. And that's pretty much it for the first section. Easy day. Now let's move to the bottom portions, which are pretty easy. So I'm going to move down here. Okay. I'm going to select not the image, but the section. And actually, because I have this in our assets panel, I'm going to go to assets, movie, Mario movie website, and I'm going to pull some of this stuff out. So I have my subheading, my title, and I also have an image. I have some media. So I'm going to pull that out as well. Perfect. And let me see what we have. So actually, this is the entire thing. So if you guys don't want to waste any time, you want to pull the entire thing out, be my guest and use this. I'm actually going to pull this into the next section. I'm going to build one with you, and then I'm going to duplicate them to the next sections. So essentially, if you guys want to build this out, this is pretty simple. And the text or the font for this is Ron Rounded Medium. I'll try to save this so that you guys also have this in the typography in the style guides. Okay, I'll try to do the colors as well as the typography, which you very simply can just grab from the site styles, both the colors, typography, and it'll be pretty easy. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to go to my assets. I'm going to grab my image here. I'm just going to pull this like this, and I'm going to scale this to the size that I want. I'm just going to cheat really quick and see what the size of this is. We have 537. So I'm just going to go 537 pixels. And I'm going to pull this right in with my content over here. We're going to scale this down to 305 minimum. 305 pixels for the minimum width. We're going to set this width to, I'm just going to set this, see if we set this to 0. There we go. So minimum width, there we go. We are going to put this container of text and our image. We are going to not stack. We are going to Alt-C, place it in a container. And just like with everything else, we're going to set this container to a 1x2 so that we can separate the image from the text. Perfect. Now I'm going to set these not to min max. We're going to set these to max content, top and bottom. Let's go ahead and max content. It looks like we have, there we go. We have some padding. We're going to zero that out. Perfect. I'm going to make sure that this content is, there we go, directly starting at that next section we have here. And it looks like we have a little bit more space. We have max content here, but it looks like there is some height here. So we're cleaning a few things up here. We have our image on the top. We have extra space here, so let's see where that space is coming from. It's probably from here. Let's see, we have, oh, so it's not. Okay, let's go and click, there it is, minimum height. We don't want that, we're gonna set that to none. Perfect. So this is exactly what we want. We want width, we want this to be 0. We're gonna keep the minimum width to 305. Now this container here, we have min, let's do max content, okay. But for whatever reason, it's still showing as min max. Must be a little bit of a glitch there. Now we're gonna do the same thing for our width here. 1FR is going to be switched to max content, so we squish everything nicely and it's proportional. Now once I have that, I can actually go ahead and delete this because I like the way that this looks and how it is put together a lot better. And on top of that, I actually now can start doing a few things. So I'm gonna Control D. I'm gonna pull this down into my next section. I'm going to make sure it's top aligned, right aligned, And I'm gonna do that for this as well. I'm gonna push it all the way here. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna just duplicate this one more time, Control D. And I'm gonna scroll down to my sections here. I'm gonna push this down, perfect. And now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I am going to give everything about 4% padding from the top, or margin, excuse me. 4% from the top and corresponding corner, 4%. So we got 4% from the left here, but we also need 4% from the top as well. All right, so let me push it down here. We have 4%. Okay. Let me move this around here because for whatever reason it's not showing up. So let's go 0. Let's do 60px. See if that works. Ah, this is why. It needs to be docked to the top. Here we go. Dock to the top. 4%. Still not working. Oh, there it is. little lag there. Okay. Container. Last thing. We're gonna do 4% from the right. 4% from the top. There it is. And we're gonna do the same thing here. 4% from the left. And 4% from the top. All right, and last thing here before we take a quick break and move into another thing, we're gonna go back to our section and we are going to go into our inspector and we are going to change a few things. So just like we set this all up, 100 VH, we're actually gonna now set all of these to auto, and I'll also set this one to auto because I want these sections to squeeze to the exact same size of this content, okay? All it's taking into consideration this content plus the 4% of margin we have left on top. And we are going to add one more thing before we change. So we'll leave this here. We're gonna just swap out the images here. So this next one, this will be Bowser, perfect. And this next one will be our lovely penguin friends. We'll change the heading, subheading, all that stuff a little bit later. And so far, so good. So we've gotten this far to where we have our Super Mario Bros. Movie. Okay, we have Mario is sticky towards the bottom. It's excellent. And this content also needs to be set to sticky as well. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll take our break. Sticky, perfect. Let's go ahead and preview. All right, there it is. Scroll up. There we go. We need to actually set some offset to this. So let's go ahead and set sticky, and we are going to set some offset. Let's see how much offset would be the best. So let's go to sticky, offset 50 pixels, and let's go ahead and add that. Perfect. Let's preview one last time. And when we come back, we are going to get our pipe involved, our release date for the movie, and that will be it for the desktop. And like I said, the reason everything is animating is because I am currently using all of the content from our assets panel, which basically is pulling the animations that we used in the first website as well. But do not forget, if you guys are curious on how to do the animations, it's literally 2 clicks of a button. I'll show you guys how to do that towards the end of this tutorial. We'll be right back. We're gonna close this here and I'll see you guys in a bit. All right, so we are back at it. So basically what we have done so far is we have gotten our Super Mario logo. We've done pretty much the section 1. We've made everything sticky. If we go ahead and preview, right, we have our logo, we have our 2 buttons, we have our hover animations. Again, like I said, we will talk about animations, hovers at the last piece here when we're done with the desktop and as we move into getting things into tablet and mobile. So we have section 1, all of this content is sticky, perfect. We've put in our content where we have our image and our text. And as you guys can see, we do need to add some spacing here, which we'll do very easily. And so let's get to that. And also we have this section here where we need to have our, if we go back here, we need to add our release date and we need to add our pipe. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go back to edit and we are going to pump this baby with, I'm gonna scroll down here, we're gonna go to our last section and we are gonna go make sure we're selecting our section and we are going to quick add actually, instead of quick adding, I'm gonna go back to my assets here. I'm gonna go to my Mario movie website just like we have been doing because I have saved these as assets. I'm gonna pull in my pipe. This should already be properly sized for me. I'm just gonna dock it to the bottom, make sure it's centered. It's docked to the bottom, perfect. And I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to grab our release date. Again, if you guys want to create this on your own, it is pretty simple. It is 3 titles, 2 titles and a paragraph, or really just 3 text elements. Okay, and again, if you guys want to use the typography that is in here, the font is Ron Rounded Medium. Now, what I am going to do for you guys is when you are actually using this, for example, I am going to edit text. I'm going to save this as, I'm going to update the theme. So I'm going to set this to Ron Rounded, and let's actually check this out. Ron Rounded Medium. So we're going to go to our style sheet. We're going to go to heading 3. I'm going to go in here, Ron Rounded Medium. There we go. We're going to set this to, we're just going to apply this for right now. We're going to actually go back to this. We have 29 pixels and the fill color is gray. Okay, so let's go back to our style sheet. Let's go back to round or heading 3. Go back in here. We're going to do 29 pixels and our color is going to be that gray, and we're going to apply. And so now we're just going to go here. We're going to go to heading 3 and perfect. And last thing here, we're going to go to edit text. We're going to set this to paragraph 2. And I am actually just going to go ahead and update theme. Okay, there we go. And we should already have, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Perfect. And we have this content already set up. So we have changed H2, H3, and paragraph 2 to be basically the typography that we were using for this release date section. Now we can go ahead and do this for our other pieces here. So edit text, heading 2, we're going to actually set this to heading 1, but because if I set this to heading 1 here, it's going to mess up everything. So I'm going to go to our styles here. We're going to go to heading 1 and I'm going to set it manually. So 69 bold. Let's go ahead. Let's go to Ron Rounded Bold. Let's go ahead and do 69 and our color will be white. Perfect. Hit apply. And let's go ahead and make sure we make those changes here. Heading 1, there we go. Perfect. Our subhead here, we're just going to set this to H3. Perfect. As we've already had it here. And this content, we're actually going to set this to paragraph 1. H2, it's a little bit different down here. So edit text. We are going to set this to paragraph 1, and it's actually going to change it. So we don't want that to happen. So again, I'm going to set this manually, H1. We're going to do the same thing. Let me go ahead and get the parameters here. We have 18 pixels and it is white and it is medium. All right, let's go to site style. We're going to H1 or P1. We're going to set it to 18. Again, we have Ron Rounded Medium. We're going to set this baby to white and apply. And we're just going to go through all of our text pieces here. Set this to P1, paragraph 1. There we go. And now this kind of just keeps everything pretty standardized. So if I ever change paragraph 1, it will change all the paragraph 1s on my website. If I change H1, it will change all the H1s on my website. So I could have done this in the beginning just with this, right? But I wanted to kind of show you guys how this is done, how to make sure that you don't have to constantly do redundant tasks. Have one heading, H1, H2, H3, one paragraph, or paragraph 1, paragraph 2. Set those, then when you start making assets, if you ever make a change to those, you can change them easily across your website. But I kind of I wanted to show 2 concepts at different times, so just gonna make sure I make those changes here as well. We have H2 here, we have H1, and we have paragraph 1. Perfect. Okay, so we are all good to go there. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to add a little bit of a gap here. There's not that much spacing between this image and our text down there, so I'm going to go ahead and go to our gap. I'm going to go ahead and set this to about 20 pixels, and I'm going to do this for all of our containers below. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. 20. Oops, don't want to do that to the text. I want to do that to our container. 20. And we can leave this one. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is we want to make sure, I'm gonna go to my layers and I want this pipe to be at the topmost part of our section. Reason being is because when we actually scroll down here, right? Let's go ahead and preview. As we scroll down, we want Mario to actually go in this pipe. Perfect. Now, like I said before, you do not want to take the preview site as the main site, okay? Like if for example, or be the true value of what everybody's seeing on the published site. That's what I mean. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do here, like I said, this is the published site where Mario goes nicely in here and the site stops scrolling nicely. So we still have these buttons showing. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to go to my pages. I'm going to switch from our V2 page as home. We're gonna set this new tutorial page to be our home by clicking the 3 dots. I'm going to set as home. I'm going to publish this now. And I'm just going to give it a couple seconds and we're going to view this here. There we go. So now Mario's pretty far down here. Our logo and our buttons are pretty far up top. And as we scroll, things are coming in from the right and left. Very nice. And this stops nicely right before we get into this pipe. Now, where I would like this to stop, just like we had in the original website, I would like Mario to obviously go into the pipe, but I want almost these two pieces to kind of stop at the same place. So let's go ahead and figure out how we can go ahead and do that. And what I'm going to do is also, I am very quickly going to create a link to something. So I'm going to set this Nintendo. I'm going to set it to a page. I'm going to set it to our V2 page. And our illumination, I'm going to go back to my V2 page. I'm going to set I'm going to set the Nintendo here to go back to, not animation. I'm going to make it go back to our tutorial page, just so I have an easy way to go back and forth. Okay, I'm going to publish. And why I want to go back and forth is because I want to see the difference between our V2 page and our original. Okay, so Mario is a little bit bigger here, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And let's go down here. So our content actually is nice, a little bit larger and a lot more close. So we're going to make sure we do that in our current page, and we also, this is exactly where we want things to end. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our page that we're currently working on, and let's see the differences here. Mario's pretty tiny. This stuff is still too close to the edge. This is a little bit better, right? We have this pretty nice and close. This is a little bit too far, and this is too far, and we're able to scroll way too far down here. So let's go ahead and see what we can fix for that. We are going to go ahead and jump to, we're going to see what settings we have here for our content. So I'm going to click my container here. I'm going to go over to see how it's docked. So it's docked to the left and to the top. I see it's inside of a container. Let's see what is going on with our container. We have it as about 88% of the width, and we have a 3% margin to the left. I'm actually going to clear this and see what happens. I'm going to look at these other containers here as well. I'm going to pretty much just zero them out. Okay, and let's go ahead and just add some of what we have in this first version of our website into our second. So let's go into our container, the one that is set with Mario. Let's see what we have here. Our width is 12.5, so let's go ahead and add that to our tutorial page. All right, so we're going to select Mario. We're going to select the container. We have, instead of max content, we're going to go to percentage and set this to 12.5. Our Mario is going to be set to, I think we're going to set him to a 100%. Perfect. And why we're going to do that is because we want Mario to fill out the full container that it's within, which has 12.5% width of that section width. Okay, so we'll be good there. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these items here. So I'm going to scroll down here. The images that we had here, we have 85.5%. Here we have them as a width. So let's go ahead and do 85.5%. Boom. And we're just going to do that for all of the content here. And let's see. We have these in containers. Not entirely sure why we decided to do that last time, but I'm pretty sure it was to get them easier to be mobile and tablet. But we'll see if we can actually do a little bit, keep this a little bit more simpler. Or honestly, what it could have been is just to keep these this content pushed in. So maybe what I do is this. I'm gonna see how much we have. A 5.7% from the right. Maybe we'll just go ahead and add some padding. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go to our docking left, I'm gonna do 5.7%, and I'm gonna just add this to all of the containers. We're just playing around with some of the settings, just making sure that we have everything to look almost exactly like what we have here. Now we do have a container here. I'm gonna set this to don't display because I wanna see where our container is here. Okay, I'm gonna see what kind of math we had here and what we figured. So we have 100% margin on the top. We have a 8.5% margin on the right. And I want to see if we had anything else there. All right, so let's just copy the 100% margin up top, which should help us out. So we have 30. We're going to bring that to 100. And we're just going to publish this. All right, so we're looking pretty good. Our Mario is much bigger. We've changed that. This content is looking a little bit better. I think it can be pushed in just a little bit more. I'm gonna click my Nintendo here so we can open up the other. This is the first iteration, so we can compare. And I'm going to pull this right about here, and I'm just gonna go back and forth. Okay, so pretty much the only difference here is obviously the background, and there is some shifting between. So let's go right about here. The position of our Bowser here. And let's see. So there's a good amount of space between here. This is our V1. This is our tutorial page. Now, do I mind, how much closer this is versus this? Not really. I do though think that the space between here and the space between here, this space is much larger than this. So I think, and that's kind of the case here. This is much more space than there is here. So maybe what we can do is we can find some way to push the Bowser out a little bit. And here as well. So this is looking good, but there is one extra scroll that I want to kind of get rid of. And I believe it's just taking out this footer, because in this website, we have no footer. So let's go ahead and do that. Here we go. So we'll go to our footer. We're just going to clear that. Let's go to publish. So that scrolling issue that we had should be gone now. Okay, boom, boom, boom. There we go, perfect. So this is actually pretty close over here. So what I'm gonna do is kind of just eyeball this. If we do recall, we did have on our V1 website, this was much further. It had an 8.5% margin from the right. So we're gonna go ahead and add that. And if you guys are thinking to yourselves, well, Brandon, how exactly do I know like how much margin I should do? Here's the thing. I basically figured out all of these margin things by either just literally moving these assets manually until I got them into the right place, use different numbers, different percentages to get the alignment that I wanted. So I'm gonna go ahead and publish. Let's go ahead and scroll. All right, this looks good. I probably want to prop this out, push this in just a little bit more so it's closer to where Bowser is. Same thing here. And this is perfect. Let me refresh this a little bit more actually, because it should be closer in. All right, that's a little bit better. I almost want it to be aligned pretty much where Bowser is. Let's go to the V1 and let's just double check. All right, so V1 is pretty far out here. V2 much closer. Let's check here. All right, V1 and V2 are looking, actually, they're both the same. So let's go to, here we go. So let's check here first. All right, so this is looking pretty good. There's still some space here. I could add additional space if I wanted to there. Let's scroll up here. The width from here to here looks pretty good. Let's check here with Bowser. And if you guys are wondering why the logo is moving, in the original, I basically took it off center a little bit, tried to eyeball it to see if I could make it a little bit more visually appealing. But I think what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna increase the size in our gap here from 30 to maybe about 40. And I am going to push our left-hand content over by, we'll just try 6.5%. Or maybe let's do 8. Let's do 8, and we are going to do that to all of our left-aligned content over here. 8. And let's try this out. Let's go ahead and publish. So this looks a little bit closer. I like that. This is still too close for my liking. So I'm going to go ahead and push that over just a little bit. I like where this is. I like where this is. Okay, let's go change Bowser just really quick. So I'm going to go to our Bowser, and I am going to pull him in. I'm going to rein him in just a little bit. Let's do 3.5. Let's go ahead and publish that. And I also think it's because this is the only left aligned piece, and there's just so much space, right? All this stuff is left aligned here. This is additional space, plus the space between it already has from the logo and this image, whereas Bowser's already, there's no space here. He's just really next to the logo. So we're gonna have to just eyeball him and move him over. Let's publish. Okay, this is looking a little bit better. Still a lot more space here. I'm liking this space. I'm liking this space. This space still feels a little bit crowded. So let's try to push him over by a little bit more. Let's just go ahead and drop him to, let's do 2.5%. Let's go ahead and publish that. And let's see. All right, this is looking a little bit better. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is desktop. Now let's dive into how we take this and bring it into tablet.